Dalawang construction worker ang nasawi sa aksidente sa ginagawang Philippine Arena sa Bukawi, Bulacan.
Dalawang construction worker ang patay matapos bumagsak ang mechanical gondola sa isang construction site sa Cebu City.
Patuloy ang retrieval operations para sa mga biktima ng sunog sa isang pabrika ng tsinelas sa Valenzuela City. Tabisyong na trabador sugatan matapos bumagsak ang train bucket sa ginagawang gusali sa Ortigas. Dalawang construction worker ang nasawi sa aksidente sa ginagawang Philippine.
We face many risks and dangers in life, especially in places or situations where we're likely to be exposed to different hazards. So are you ready? Are you protected? Today, we will discuss different topics regarding personal protective equipment or PPE, its definition, history, guidelines on selecting PPE, types of PPE, occupational safety and health, or OSH rule on PPE and devices. In any type of work or some kind of activity where an accident can happen, we usually use some protective gear or suit to lessen the risk of us getting injured. Personal protective equipment, or commonly referred as PPE, is basically anything you can wear that will protect you in any type of hazardous condition. In a statement by U.S. Department of Labor, PPE is an equipment worn to minimize exposure to hazard that causes serious workplace injuries and illnesses. All personal protective equipment should be safely designed and constructed, and should be maintained in a clean and reliable fashion. In a workplace, the employers have duty concerning the provision and use of personal protective equipment, or PPE, at work. They will provide the necessary materials, tools, necessities for the workers to ensure that they will have the best working conditions. According to Health and Safety Executive, PPE is an equipment that will protect the users against health and safety risks at work. It can include items such as safety helmet, gloves, eye protection, high visibility clothing, safety footwear, and safety harness. It also includes respiratory protective equipment such as face masks that we usually use in this time of pandemic to protect ourselves. These items has their own functions and uses to protect a worker or an individual in different types of hazards. Why is PPE important? We should never ignore the importance of PPE in a workplace. PPE is important because it prepares you in any health and safety risks and gives you extra protection in any event of an accident or against hazardous elements. Making the workplace safe includes providing instructions, procedures, trainings, and supervision to people to encourage to work safe and responsibly. The first step to safety is to conduct a full risk assessment to identify any dangerous practices. PPE is legally required for most industries, such as construction, agriculture, and engineering. Protective equipment required by law will differ according to the wearer's working conditions. In an article by U.S. Department of Labor, it was mentioned that if a PPE is to be used, a PPE program should be implemented. This program should address the present hazard, the selection, maintenance, and the use of PPE. The training of the employees and monitoring of the program is essential to ensure its ongoing effectiveness. PPE is the last level of protection in the workplace. The protective equipment forms the final barrier between employee and the occupational hazard they face every day. That is why it is crucial to properly implement and use personal protective equipment or PPE in a workplace.
Now, I will discuss the history of personal protective equipment. According to researchers, it was documented from an ancient Greek poem, Homer's Odyssey. In the poem, there's a brief description of someone using gloves to protect his hands from thorns as he worked away in his garden. Throughout the centuries, gloves has further expanded to a fashion statement but are still being used as protective everyday protective wear. In 900 BC, another historic form of protective equipment making its introduction was the helmet. Hard hats and headgear can be traced back as far back as soldiers in ancient times, who wore protective headgear when heading off to battle. The ironclad material was definitely heavy, so heavy in fact, oftentimes when a soldier would fall off their horse, they would need help from others to get up again. 1880, Paul Johnson, an African-American inventor who patented eye protectors, welders, construction workers, and others in hazardous professions can think safely goggles for helping to protect their eyesight. The 20th century saw a real demand for increased high-quality protection, leading to more innovative and refined designs compared to the basic designs seen previously. Fashionable safety eyewear is now available that workers can enjoy wearing while still being highly functional. You can now even buy prescription goggles and glasses which are in compliance with safety standards. In 16th century, plague doctors of Europe also wore protective uniforms consisting of full-length gown, helmet, glass eye coverings, gloves, and boots to prevent contagion when dealing with plague victims. In 1844, Charles Goodyear developed a process for the vulcanization of rubber that rubber could be used for gloves. In 1899, Caroline Hampton, the surgical scrub nurse for Dr. William Halsted, developed severe inflammation of the skin on her hands as a result of the disinfectant used at the time. Halsted commissioned the Goodyear Rubber Company to make the world's first thin rubber gloves used in medicine as a result of his desire to protect the hands of his nurse and future wife. Like early medical gloves, surgical face masks were at first very in the late 19th century, they were nothing more than one or more layers of gauze placed over a person's nose or mouth. It wasn't until after 1920s that much better and newer masks were developed, and people began to truly understand the importance of having medical personnel wear these masks around sick patients and during surgery.
Personal Protective Equipment Selection or PPE selection. This topic discusses about what we need or what do you need to consider on using or buying a proper PPE, because we all know that a different job or every job has a distinguished type of PPE that needed to use. Regardless of the industry where you are employed, there is an expectation of a safe and healthy workplace. While there are a variety of hazards that could be present in any given environment, safety precautions involve having the right personal protective equipment to reduce or lessen the possible risk of or harm that may occur on or working time of an employee. So PPE selection should be based on job hazard analysis or JHA, which includes evaluation of hazard, specific tasks, procedure and work practices, in consultation with area supervision. No equipment is appropriate for all individuals and threats, but it must be selected properly, used according to the setting of use and level of risk. So let's move on the factors influencing PPE selection. First is types of anticipated exposure. This is determined by the type of the anticipated exposure, such as touch, splashes or sprays, or large volume of blood or body fluids that might penetrate the clothing. You can see in the pictures in the upper right, there's a guy wearing a PPE and hold a letter that says that biohazard stay out. It's a proper PPE that have a full gear, yellow clothing for possible biohazard that may penetrate the skin, and he is also wearing a tear gas mask for it that helps him to keep out of the exposure of a possible respiratory illnesses, and he is also wearing a black gloves. That gloves it uses for dealing hot liquid or chemical liquid. So because it keeps him touching his skin that because his job is dealing in that kind of possible risk like that. And in the lower right, there's a man spraying or painting a wall. So he wear a proper mask that keeps him inhaling the paint, because we all know that paint is a chemical and its smell might cause respiratory illnesses in the near future. And the last picture is the guy wearing I don't know what it calls, but it is for a welder. This PPE usually used by a welder. It is an all-in-one PPE that have goggles, safety goggles, and a PPE for a facial PPE. So it has a goggle for eyes PPE and a facial PPE because this type of job description, the welder, the possible risk kasi, the possible risk that they encounter is the facial risk in their face, and most probably the eyes, because while welding the metal had a sparkling like that may cause for blinding a person. Next is the durability and appropriateness of PPE for the task. For example, whether a gown or an apron is selected for PPE. If a gown is being selected, whether it is to be fluid resistant or fluid proof or neither. So another example is, this is my come up example. There is a worker or construction worker in railroad. So their working time is in evening, and it is assuming that is very dark. So he is wearing a vest, but his vest have no glowing the dark light in a strip like that glows in the dark. So the possible risk that may encountered by the worker is hitting by a running car, because the possible causes, or number one cause why hit by a car, because the driver didn't see the worker, because the worker vest have no light or glowing the dark light. The last one is fit. PPE must be fit in every individual user. The employer must provide all available sizes for their workforce to ensure their safety while working. You can see the example picture in the upper right. There is a check and an X. You can determine that in the X, you can see that the PPE is too large for the workforce, or for her is too large. So in the check, you can see that it's perfectly fit for the worker. So example of correct PPE to use in different hazard. In the example picture, there is a physical and health hazard. The left side is physical hazard. That kind of PPE is wear by a worker dealing with electricity or pinching objects. This kind of PPE in reality wear by a Meralco guy. If you all saw that kind of a worker, Meralco guy that go up in electrical tower to fix the electricity line like that. And in the right side is the health hazard PPE. This kind of PPE is common for me. This is a common PPE. We all see this in media because of the pandemic. So this kind of PPE is used by nurse, doctors to keep them safe on possible virus, because the health worker is dealing in viruses like that, to keep them safe. And also the PPE keeps them safe from the radiation.
Personal protective equipment refers to all equipments like devices, appliances, and associated accessories that is worn by an individual to provide protection against one or more health or safety risks while at work. There are several different types of safety gear, and there are specific situations that dictate which use is most appropriate. Training and proper use are also important for ensuring PPE as an effective safety measure. So let us proceed to the types of PPE. First one, skin protection. There are the type of clothing that protects the skin against any hazard. These may cover the entire body like overall bodysuits and chemical suits. This can also cover only parts of the body like aprons, jackets, and knee pads. Overalls and boiler suits are designed to give you protection and comfort while you work. Overalls are designed for single-use environments such as hazardous waste removal. Heavyweight suits are used as protection from rain and high visibility. Second one, respiratory PPE protects the entire internal respiratory system and keeps foreign objects out of the mouth. Because of the way it is built, respiratory protection also helps to protect the outside of the mouth and the face. The respiratory protective equipment is a type of personal protective equipment designed to protect the person from airborne contaminants like fumes, asbestos, and dust. It protects the person from low levels of oxygen such as working in a confined space and during diving work. Next one, eye protection. This aids in the protection of the eyes, mucous membranes as well as the reduction of the chance of foreign items entering the eyes and causing damage. These goggles are impact resistant for real protection of the eyes. These safety goggles protect the eyes from injury from flying debris like dirt, dust, and chemical splashes. Protective eyewear needs to meet certain safety standards. Next one, head protection. Head protection can protect not just the head, but also other regions of the upper body, such as neck, hair, nose, and ears from physical burn. Or should I say physical harm. Hard hats or safety helmets acts as the first line of defense against head injury, but they only work when they are worn correctly. Safety helmets save lives and reduce the risk of brain injury. Most head injuries can be avoided if the proper head protection is selected, used, and maintained. Next one is the ear protection. These are used to reduce the level of noise to the ears. Earplugs and earmuffs are the most common types of ear protection. Ear protection are designed by insulating the ear canal with soft muffling material. The material reduces the amplitude of sound waves transmitted to the eardrum, which when too loud damages the eardrum, causing decreased auditory perception and possibly deafness. Next one, foot protection. These are boots and shoes that come with slip-resistant soles, penetration-resistant midsoles, and protective toe cups. Safety shoes are required where the potential for serious injury to the foot may result from an employee's daily job duties. Foot injuries may occur in areas where there are rolling or falling objects piercing the sole, or where foot are exposed to electrical hazards such as static discharge or electric shock hazard. Next one, hand and arm protection. These protect the hands from wounds, burns, and cracks. This can also provide protection for the whole arms. Potential hazard to hands and arms include skin absorption of chemicals or biological hazards, chemical or thermal burns, electric shock, bruises, abrasions, cuts, fractures, or amputations. Protective equipment includes gloves, finger guard, and arm coverings. Selection must be based on the performance characteristics of the gloves in relation to the task to be performed. Next one, body protection. This is necessary to protect the body from certain dangers such as moving vehicles. Many different materials of construction are available for various protective body garments. Paper-like fiber used for disposable suits provide protection against dust and small splashes. Treated wool and cotton adapts well to changing temperatures. Duck is a closely woven cotton fabric that protects against cuts and bruises when handling heavy, sharp, or rough materials. Next one, fall protection. Individuals can use them when working at a height and wear the harness. Falls are among the most common causes of serious work-related injuries and deaths. Employers must set up the workplace to prevent employees from falling off overhead platforms, elevated workstations, or into holes in the floor and walls. That's all.
personal protective equipment and devices. Personal protective equipment are a variety of devices and garments designed to serve as a barrier between workers and workplace hazards. 1081. General Provisions. 1081.01. Every employer as defined in 1002. In this provision, it says that every employer should provide his or her employees the barriers or protective equipment that the employee need at his or her own expense, such as eye, face, hand, and foot protection. These are the barriers whenever they are required due to the hazardous nature of the process or environment, whether chemical, radiological, or otherwise. The meaning the employer should buy the PPE that is workers need to ensure their safety. 1081.02. All personal protective equipment shall be of the approved design and construction appropriate for the exposure and the work to be performed. In this provision, it states that the given PPE by the employer should be relevant to the work that the worker will perform, because there are different kinds of PPE depending on the work that you're assigned of. Or example of this are PPE that they use at the medical field during the pandemic. We witnessed the PPE that they're wearing and how suitable it is for their work, because they should be protected from the virus from their patients. 1081.03. The employer shall be responsible for the adequacy and proper maintenance of personal protective equipment used in his workplace. In this provision, it says that employers should always guarantee the effectiveness of the PPE that the workers uses in the workplace in order to ensure the safety of everyone in the workplace and to avoid possible accidents and injuries that can occur anytime. 1081.04. No person shall be subjected or exposed to a hazardous environmental condition without protection. Provision 1081.04. This explains that workers should never be deployed in the field of work without proper PPE. Example of this is the construction site. Workers should not be deployed in the site without wearing protection such as hard helmets, vests, harnesses, and many more, because the site is very prone to accidents. The next provision is 1082. Eye and face protection. 1082.01. Eyes and face protective equipment shall be required where there is reasonable probability of exposure to such hazards. This provision tells us that the eye protection and protective equipment should be required if the worker will be exposed in risk of accidents. Example of this is the workers that will experience risking their eye and face, such as welders. They should wear proper eye and face protection so that the spark caused by the metal and the grinder, it won't hurt or damage their eye, because it can lead to more harmful disease. 1083. Respiratory protection. 1083.01. The primary corrective measure in this control of occupational diseases caused by harmful dusts, fogs, fumes, mists, gases, smokes, sprays, or vapors shall be to prevent atmospheric contamination. This provision tells that the employer should have a preventive measure against the occupational diseases caused by harmful smokes and etc. They should ensure adequate ventilation on the workplace. The workers must wear personal protection, including safety glasses, gloves, ear muffs, and face masks, face shields. And lastly, the workplace should be clean and at maintaining their regular intervals to avoid kicking up of dust. The next provision is the head protection. 1084. 1084.01 Hard hats for the protection of workers from impact, penetration from falling and flying objects, blows, and from limited electric shock and burns shall be provided where there is reasonable probability of exposure to such hazard. In this provision, this tells us the importance of hard hats in some workplace to protect the workers to risk of injury and death. Hard hats must be able to absorb the shock of the blow from falling objects and be able to resist penetration from sharp objects. 1085 Hand and arm protection. 1085.01 When selecting gloves, consideration should be given to the hazards to which the wearer may be exposed and the ease and free movements of the fingers. It says that gloves shall not be worn by workers operating drills, punch presses, or other machinery in which the hand may be caught by moving parts. Also, gloves is very important to the workers that not only in manufacturing but also in medical field. Next is 1086 Safety belts, lifelines, and safety nets. This includes the harness. In 1086.01 general provisions, workmen working in unguarded surface above open pits or tanks, steep slopes, moving machinery, and similar locations, or working from unguarded surfaces risk 6 meters or 20 feet or more above water or ground, temporary or permanent floor platform, scaffold construction, or where otherwise exposed to the possibility of falls, hazardous to life or limb, shall be secured by safety belts and life belts. In this provision, explains that when working at heights or high place, your safety belts or harness is vitally important. It's the piece of equipment that will prevent you from falling. Safety harnesses reassures your safety when working in hazardous situations, and it will not only reduce the risk of an accident, but it will also allow you to work with both hands freely, as the safety harnesses is attached to your body. Safety nets is also vitally important because it helps to prevent objects falling to the ground. Example, building construction near road. We need to apply or construct a safety nets to prevent other materials from falling to the road, and it will decrease the risk of having an accident. 1087 Use of safety shoes. Workers shall be provided with approved safety shoes and leg protection whenever necessary, as determined by the nature of work. This explains the importance of safety shoes and leg protection in a workplace to reduce risk of injury in our feet and in our legs. It can help us protect our feet against materials or heavy materials that can fall to our feet. It will also protect us against burns, cuts, and punctures and impact. They can also prevent slips and falls, which can lead to more serious problems.
Accidents, risks, dangers, and hazards are part of human life. There are a lot of situations and places where we can face this type of problems, especially in our workplace. We cannot completely avoid them, but we can be prepared and be ready when the time comes. Knowing the principles and functions of personal protective equipment or PPE are one of the ways to prepare and protect yourself. As you work through different situations, you will prepare to different outcomes. Safety is at the core of everything we do. We continue to work to our goal of causing zero harm to other people and to ourselves. I'm Ariza Inamara.
I'm Christian T. de la Peña.
I'm Jerusalem Cristina Marie.
My name is Sanon Victor Q. of Lefias.
I'm Tyler Andre P. Oliva.
We thank you for watching.